So now moving on to the closeout report for the Capital Delivery Community Halswell Skate Park. And Darren, welcome to the table. Any remarks that you'd like to make on this report?
Kia ora tātou. Just to introduce the project manager, Steve Gray. He's one of the very experienced project managers in my team. Skate park in Halswell Domain opened around 18 months ago, and this captures the journey of that project. So we'll take it as read and take any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions on this report? Leanne?
I have a couple of questions. So one was in relation to the sorry, I've got the wrong document open in front of me. Apologies. The now I've opened the wrong one. Ask someone else first.
Okay, Yanni, we'll come to you first, and then I'll come right back to you. Yanni.
The lessons learnt was quite interesting. There's a quote on page 81. Contractors based outside Christchurch can add real value in reducing project overall cost, which kind of raised my eyebrows because, you know, obviously it raises two questions for me. One is, are we getting ripped off locally? And if so, how do we mitigate that? But also, how we're procuring, have we got the right mechanisms in place to ensure we're getting value? So I don't know if you could just maybe elaborate a little bit on that, because I was quite impressed with the cost of this project versus what you delivered compared to other ones that I've seen.
Steve can take some of the account for that. He's done a few of these skate parks in the past. To answer the procurement question, we put these on GETS, which is nationwide. Skate parks are a reasonably, what would you call it?
It's quite specialised.
Yeah, and in doing so, there are only, I suppose, there's a handful or maybe a few more, Steve, that could do that. So in this case, we found somebody that offered the overall best value for money, both in terms of price and non-price attributes that came to the party here, and it just so happened that we got tremendous value from this contractor.
Yeah, so the contractor that Angus McMillan, so he's actually based up in Hastings, and he gave us a very good price in terms of the construction. With our procurement method, it was a weighted attributes contract, but it was a selected contractor because, again, as Darren mentioned, it's we want people that specialise in this type of concreting work. Angus has been in this game for a long time, and he knows exactly what he's doing with developing a skate park. We do have other local contractors. In this case here, they didn't put in the best price to win this particular contract, but we did get a very good value on this one. We had two skate parks that we built at a similar time, this one and Night Stream. A local contractor won the contract for Night Stream. Again, they won it through that tendering process through weighted attributes. So it does come down to how much a contractor is, I suppose, prepared to buy a contract if that's what they need to do to keep themselves busy, or whether they're making profit out of it. We've had a car park recently actually where we've had 15 tenders came in and a huge range of submissions, and that was from places up in Tasman through to Ashburton, as well as all the local contractors. So it really depends on just where the contracting field is at that time.
So even with the cost of getting equipment down here, and it still works out cheaper? Yeah,
it's still cheaper for them to come down and set themselves up for several months. He brought down, I think, 4 staff from memory to build this and set them up down here for the 2 months.
Okay. And is there a level of awareness within the local market that they're not been as competitive as perhaps we would expect?
Yeah, we as part of being a good provider of work to the community, we take time to ensure that we debrief each of those individuals. So I appreciate the time and the cost that it takes contractors, private individuals, small or large, to prepare tender documentation. So part of our deal is that we'll take time to debrief them for the unsuccessful ones. So they're given that, and they'll come in, they'll meet with Steve or any other member of my team for half an hour. We'll look at their non-price performance, and also we'll give them an indication of where they sit in the overall pricing thing as well. So That's part of our partnership and collaboration with that contracting community.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, just the other question I had was, I noted that you, although the project came in on budget, which was great, it added some additional equipment through, I guess, program budgets. And I guess this kind of goes back to the conversation we've been having. Like I know at our board, when we've tried to get things like water fountains put in, we're told there's no money and we can't. So same with shelter, we've funded that through our discretionary. So I'm just kind of wondering what the process is for these projects to add additional expenditure from program budgets, and what the decision making is through council or community board or staff, and how we take a consistent approach across the various projects that we inevitably get.
Well, in terms of this project, we had, through the early consultation process, it had been raised around providing shelter, and the community was quite keen on seeing some adult fitness equipment going in. So through that consultation process, we went back and had conversations with the Parks Unit, with the project sponsor. We looked at what they had in terms of their project budgets available at that time, and they said, look, we've actually got this funding around. I think we had money out of sports park structures new, as well as play and recreational new budget, which still had the capacity to add these as items as part of this project. If we didn't, then we would have either amended the plan before it went back to the board as a final, and we would have made that clear through the consultation that we didn't have the funding for those items. In this case, we were able to.
Understand how we're having a consistent approach across the organisation. So is it just based on who asks who when?
Well, I think it just happened to be this particular year they had the money available to be able to support these extra items. It may not happen this year, but it might be the way it works in next year's budget.
I probably can't talk to the organisational approach, but in this case it was, as Steve alluded to, it was the case of we started with the scope of a skate park, and viewing the bigger picture and the community needs, we determined there were some other community aspirations. We talked to my colleagues in both Parks and Sport and Rec, who said that they had money tagged and available to bring into this project. So I won't talk to the bigger organisational approach as to how those programs and projects are developed. But in this case, this is what we ended up with.
Yeah, thanks for what you've done. Support, and it looks like a really successful project. So
Been very well received.
Yep, and under budget. Certainly on budget was mentioned earlier, but under budget, which is always good to see as well.
Thank you.
Leah.
But a year late. So, and that's the 11 months late that concerned me, because a significant chunk of that was the resource consenting, and that's on the organisation. So what went wrong with the resource consenting?
Yeah.
I don't think anything went wrong.
No, I think it was just the questions, as stated in here. We had a total of 8 Lagoimas that we received through the process.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Lagoimas separately,
Yep.
but are they relevant to the resource
through
consenting?
the Lagoima process, which also then created some of those delays around the consenting. For instance, one of the Lagoimas was around the acoustic report that we had done for the skate facility. That was challenged as part of the consent process, and the people that challenged it had actually gone to a London-based consultant. So we then had to get our report peer-reviewed against that. So it's just all those ongoing time in terms of creates delays in terms of that, and that flow-on effect then delayed us from actually going to tender. I think the consent itself was
There's a symbiotic relationship between Lagoima. It was really around the noise. No one wanted a skate park. There's a perception that skate parks are noisy.
Yeah, which is why I really loved you taking a comment from the community, which was I was opposed to this.
Yes.
And now I'm a guardian.
Yes.
because I love what it's doing for the kids.
So Lagoima's in relation to resource consent, the two of those moving together, that was primarily the significant delay, was making sure that we'd addressed all of the Lagoima issues that then allowed us to put forward a robust resource consent application. So we took our time through that process to ensure that what we got ticked the Lagoima boxes and met that process, but also made sure that we had a really robust resource consent application that could get approved, and did in the end.
Right. So, it's interesting, because my question around Lagoima was, have we learnt the lesson about, whether as much information can be put in the public arena so that people don't need to Lagoima it, but you're now saying that the purpose of the Lagoima requests in large, or by and large, were in relation to the resource consent application.
It was a bit of everything.
Right.
So we had 3 Lagoima requests when we first started the project looking at site location, because the project actually started off where we didn't have a site
No.
for building this. We
You
started
had
off
about 34 sites,
34,
I think.
yeah, that's right. 34 potential sites we could have looked at, and through a matrix system that we had, which was looking at things like land parcel size,
Yeah.
setbacks from residential properties. We use a 40-metre setback when it comes to dealing with acoustic
Yeah.
noise with skate parks. So looking at other facilities that are close by, such as toilets, shops, bus routes. It's taking all of those things into account, so that whittled it down to sort of 4
Yeah.
possible sites, and that's what we went out and consulted on. So we received 3 Lagoimas based on those sites, and people wanted more information relating to that matrix, to the concept that we're looking at, how it would fit into that
Well,
site.
was there anything that we can learn from that in respect to what can we make publicly available at the time to reduce the need for people to actually filter through the Lagoima process?
Yeah, it was interesting because actually I was this morning talking to the park planner actually that was involved with the project, and we'd actually already taken a lot of lessons learned out of the Sumner skate park, the Levi skate park, because that was stopped in, I think it was in 2015, and we took a lot of lessons from that in terms of that early engagement. So in this case here, even before we went out and consulted, we had already gone, and our engagement advisors had been even through door knockings on some of those properties close to where we were proposing to consult on. So we were actually engaging very early on this. We were aware that skate parks can be contentious. We felt that we actually had made a really good effort to get that out to the public at an early stage.
No, I'm not talking about going out to the public at an early stage. I'm talking about what they asked for. You know, do we take a lesson learned from what they asked for that was then subsequently released under the Lagoima that we could have basically put on site, put on a website straight away and just said all of the information's here?
Some of the information we didn't have at the time, so there was things that they were asking.
But it's not covered by Lagoima if it doesn't exist at the time.
No, but they were still asking the question, and because unfortunately the request comes in and they actually put there, we're asking this information under the Official Information Act, we've got to go through that process in terms of the timing to respond to it. Even if we don't have the information, it still takes time to go through that.
Yes, I know. I understand that. So how much were most of the requests things that didn't exist?
Oh, look, I've got a list here of all the items they'd asked for. You know, people were asking for copy of the overlay plan presented at the workshop that we held, the SIPTED report. You know what SIPTED is? Yeah. The brief given to the skate park designer, the landscape concept, the acoustic reporting, the resource consent application. So there's a whole range of things that were.
A lot of those things are publicly able to be made available publicly.
Yeah.
So my question is were they on a public website that people could access?
We put as much information on as we felt was needed at the time, and based on this, yes, we could look at putting additional information on.
What I'm interested in is lessons learned from these. And that's all.
Yeah.
But you just answered my question. Thank you.
So yes, we could, but it's one of those things you just don't know what you're going to get asked either. So
well, maybe it's not a question of putting up what you think you might get asked. Maybe put as much as should be available on the basis of transparency.
Yep.
Put it on a website so that it's not under the Lagoima website, but under the under the Lagoima page, but under the project page, and then people can look to their heart's content. Yeah.
There are other projects where that's happened very successfully. The Akaro wastewater project, for example, would be one where we've done exactly what Leanne is suggesting.
Right. Okay.
All right. Sarah.
Yeah, so just quickly following on from that, so the lessons learned from that and the discussion that you've just had will then flow into the next Sumner Skate Park.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Great. Thank you. Are there any further questions? Anne?
Yeah, thank you. At the moment, we're in the process of putting some accessible playground equipment into Halswell Domain and getting that done, which is fantastic. Back to the question about, in terms of the process of planning something like this, when would the community board or residents put into that process a request for something like accessible playground equipment? It kind of goes back to the question that was asked previously, but it would be great to be able to have an accessible playground equipment as part of something like this as a given, rather than actually have to do it after the event. When would be a good place for that to happen?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can give you the right answer on that, to be quite honest. I think it's one of those things that this accessible playground has obviously come through as an additional request since this project's closed out. It's one of those ones, I know, working with park planners, we've often said to the community, if there's something they want, use the LTP process for requesting equipment or additional upgrades, or so that way it goes through that proper channel. It can be looked at in terms of funding. It can be planned out properly. Yeah, we do get a lot of these requests, I suppose, that do come directly to the board, and then it's how do we make that fit within a current budget, and sometimes those budgets just aren't available at the time, and that's where the LTP process is useful for the community to, I suppose, to take that process and put in submissions around it. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's answered it for you, but...
All right, thank you. Are there any further questions? You're happy to move this, Jimmy? Do I have a seconder? Melanie? Is there any debate?
Yeah, because this one is pretty good, I think it's a very good model, particularly if we review scope, then meet, community needs, and also through the open, transparent, the consultation, and also the budget, $391,000. Eventually 102 surplus. That's amazing. Cost 3 years. Actually, it's very impressive. And also warmly welcomed by the young people, by the community, etc. Even during consultation time period, my understanding still have but some of the surrounding area residents have kind of concern, noise issue, etc. But eventually, through the conversation and mitigate those effects, then have very good outcome. That's pretty good. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anne?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the work that Steve, you did in terms of getting this was a very long and drawn out and complex project, and you worked with community, and the team did an awful lot of work to bring along at times very difficult people who were very opposed, as we've heard through the Lagoimas and things, and now we have a community that's actually really supportive and happy. So I also really wanted to acknowledge the fact that you really took into account the young people's voice in this, and they actually really drove a lot of what happened here. So it's been a very good project, and much appreciated, and thank you for 2 skate parks out there. It's fantastic. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No further debate, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks very much indeed. So now moving on to item 11,